So you please show your appreciation, for grace will lead me home.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2.
On the 26th of June, 2015, Barack Obama was giving the eulogy at the funeral of Clementia C. Pinckney, one of 9 black worshippers murdered in a church by a white supremacist. Obama started to recite Amazing Grace before breaking down in tears and singing it. He explained later, "I didn't know what else to say. I felt as if I'd run out of words because I've been attending memorials like this too much, and it doesn't seem to have any impact." And what a chilling irony. Obama sang Amazing Grace in Charleston, South Carolina, the port through which 70% of the British slave ships delivered their 3 million captives. This is the first contradiction in a story of contradictions, of how a slave ship captain and a slave had a crucial impact in the fight for the abolition of slavery. This is the story of 2 boys who were both at sea, aged 11, and whose paths through life mirrored each other before eventually crossing in London. There, they both became huge celebrities at the heart of the abolition movement. Both wrote influential and best-selling novels, books, making the case for abolition. Today, one of them is remembered because of a song, and the other one is virtually forgotten. This afternoon, we hope to tell the whole story. The story begins in 1745, when Olaudah Equiano, or Gustavus Vassa, was born in Benin in Africa. John Newton, 20 years older, was already an unruly sailor whose bad behavior had resulted in his being bound for a time as a slave himself to an African queen. A decade later, their lives started to reflect each other with uncanny regularity. In 1755, Equiano was kidnapped into slavery.
They carried us off, our hands tied, as far as they could till night came on. Thus I continued to travel, sometimes by land, sometimes by water, through different countries and various nations, till at the end of 6 or 7 months I arrived at the sea coast, and my sister and I were separated. The first object which saluted my eyes when I arrived on the coast was the sea, and a slave ship riding at anchor, awaiting its cargo. These filled me with astonishment, which was soon converted into terror when I was carried on board. I was immediately handled and tossed up to see if I were sound by some of the crew, and I was now persuaded that I had gotten into a world of bad spirits and that they were going to kill me.
At the same time, on the same coast, John Newton was buying and selling slaves, as these entries from his unpublished 1753 diary show. Monday, 29th of October, Captain Ellis's large Gold Coast cargo to barter enables him to bear away all the trade here from a vessel like mine that only has a common assortment. This day, I bought a fine man-boy from Mr. Langton, but they come excessive dear. I likewise went aboard French vessels who offered some fine slaves to sell for bast, iron, and knives. But I was not able to come up to their prices, for they understood little of the trade and proved excessive expensive.
Can you sail the fierce seas? Can you plough the wild main? Can you ride the wrath of waves like a venturesome blade? Can you sleep 'neath the deck of a vessel of fame? For when that you do, you'll master your trade. Can you leave your own family and loved ones behind for a crew of vicious men and a captain likewise? Can you face the flog and the lash and ne'er be afraid? For when that you do, you'll master your trade. Can you sail to distant lands, to a far and foreign shore, plunder realms without mercy, claim your spoils of war, sealing souls for your chattels, their lives to degrade? For when that you do, you'll master your trade. Can you abuse your fellow man, leave them shackled down in chains? And can you brutalize and violate, disregard their cries of pain? Can you cast them overboard to a watery grave? For when that you do, you'll master your trade.
Newton's seafaring career ended in 1755 through illness. Equiano was owned by several sea captains, proved himself to be an outstanding sailor, travelling the world, and lived in London between voyages until he eventually settled there in 1784, 4 years after Newton. In that intervening period, both Newton and Equiano found a deep-seated belief in God, inspired by shipwrecks that almost killed them when they were both around the same age. Newton's was in March 1748. I was awakened from a sound sleep by the force of a violent sea which broke on board us. We soon found the ship was filling with water very fast. The sea had torn away the upper timbers on one side and made a mere wreck in a few minutes. We had recourse to the pumps, but the water increased against our efforts. Almost every passing wave was breaking above my head. All the provisions we had saved had washed overboard. The sails, too, were mostly blown away. Our expectations grew darker every day. Thus it continued until we saw land 4 weeks after the damage we had suffered at the hands of the sea. I was sincerely touched with a sense of undeserved mercy I had received in being brought safe through so many dangers. I was sorry for my part misspent life and purposed an immediate reformation. Thus, to all appearance, I was a new man.
At half
Equiano underwent a similar conversion in February 1767.
At 1:30 in the morning, the man at the helm saw something under the lee beam that the sea washed against. It was a rock. I went down to the captain and told him the danger we were in. By this time the surf was foaming round us and made a dreadful noise on the breakers, and the very moment we let the anchor go, the vessel struck against the rocks. One swell now succeeded another. The roaring of the billows increased, and with one single heave of the swells, the sloop was pierced and transfixed among the rocks. In a moment, a scene of horror presented itself to my mind, such as I had never conceived or experienced before. All my sins stared me in the face. I thought that God had hurled his direful vengeance on my guilty head. My spirits at this forsook me, and I expected every moment to go to the bottom. I determined, if I should still be saved, that I would never swear again. And in the midst of my distress, I remembered the Lord, and that gave me some small hope.
Both Newton and Equiano turned to evangelism, having been introduced to it by sailors they met in London. Both sought ordination, and both were turned down. However, the publication of Newton's best-selling autobiography, An Authentic Narrative, paved the way for his arrival in Olney in 1764. Lord Dartmouth, encouraged by the book's publisher, offered Newton the curacy of St. Peter's and St. Paul's. There, he settled into a new life, bringing together a disparate community, supported by his childhood sweetheart and now wife, Polly.
Oh, Polly, my Polly, your whispering fills my heart. Through long separation, I conjure you when we're apart. As mumbling coaches, I chatted to strangers for days. When what a man needs is his chair and his hearth, and his wife's tender ways. Dear Polly, my Polly, dear Polly, my Polly, my love I send to thee when I'm far away from thee.
Oh, Johnny, my Johnny, the sight of you changed me quite. When first I beheld you at my parents' house that dark night, so young and so shy, all I wanted to do was to hide. But I waited and waited and waited for you, for to be your bride. Dear Johnny, my Johnny, dear Johnny, my Johnny, these words I send to you when you're far away from me.
Dear Polly, my Polly, there's something so close in what you write, so pertinent, dearest, I see that you walk in the light. It fills me with joy when I hear that you watch and you pray. May the good Lord keep you safe while I'm away. Dear Polly, my Polly, dear Polly, my Polly, my love I send to thee when I'm far away from thee.
Dear Johnny, my Johnny, dear Johnny, my Johnny, these words I send to you when you're far away from me.
Newton's reputation as a preacher grew, and congregations of 60 grew to thousands. And with the poet William Cowper, Newton and Cowper wrote a new hymn for every Sunday to start the service. And in the 348 Olney hymns were published in February 1779. And among them, first sung on New Year's Day 1773, was Amazing Grace. During that same period, Equiano was equally industrious. In 1761, aged 16, he started his journey to freedom.
My master had said that he never intended to use me as a common slave, but to encourage me in trading, that I might have money enough in some time to purchase my freedom. And when that was the case, he would let me have it for £40 sterling money, which was only the same price he gave for me. I endeavoured to try my luck as a merchant. I had one single half bit, which is equal to 3 pence in England. I trusted to the Lord to be with me, and at one of our trips to St. Eustatia, a Dutch island, I bought a glass tumbler with my half bit, and when I came to Montserrat, I sold it for a bit or 6 pence. We made several successive trips to St. Eustatia, and in our next, finding my tumbler so profitable, with this 1 bit I bought 2 tumblers more, and when I came back, I sold them for 2 bits, equal to £1 sterling. Thus was I going about all the islands, ever trading as I went. Around 4 years later, finding myself with about £47, I went to my master, and with my money in my hand and many fears in my heart, I prayed him be as good as his offer to me. This speech seemed to confound him. "What," said he, "give you your freedom? Have you got £40 sterling? "Yes, sir," I answered. "How did you get it?" replied he. I told him, very honestly, on which my master replied he would not have made me the promise if he had thought I should have got money so soon. My master then said he would not be worse than his promise. Taking the money, told me to go to the secretary at the register office and get my manumission drawn up. These words of my master were like a voice from heaven unto me. In an instant, all my trepidation was turned into unutterable bliss, and I most reverently bowed myself with gratitude, unable to express my feelings, but by the overflowing of my eyes.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found, was blind, but now I see. 'Twas grace that taught my heart to fear, and grace my fears relieved. How precious did that grace appear, the hour I first believed. Through many dangers, toils and snares, I have already come. 'Tis grace that brought me safe thus far, and grace will lead me home. The Lord has brought
was the tune in 1773, according to the Cowper and Newton Museum in Olney. In the late 1700s, London was a fast-growing and bustling city. Around 20,000 black people already lived there. Many did unskilled labouring jobs, or for the women, even worse. Many women were abandoned by their slave masters or left widowed and had to fend for themselves. There were at least 2 all-black brothels for the pleasure of the upper classes.
Naught but a painted black mommet am I, bought for the master's pleasure, sought for my beauty and a fine conversation, and these long small fingers, so nimble, so patient, ensuring the master's pleasure. So many masters, they walk through these doors, men of renown and of riches, some of them of a lascivious mind, some of them are frolicsome, loathsome, or kind, but all with their brains in their breeches. Whatever these masters do want me to be, I'll be before they can but ask me. Far lands scattered over with rubies and gold, a Shulamite's kisses to keep out the cold, all through a looking glass darkly.
London became the centre of activity for both Newton and Equiano as their paths got closer. Newton took up a London parish in 1780. Just before that, Equiano was emerging as a well-known and respected figure amongst influential society. Amazing Grace was written in the same year that saw the first step towards abolition. In 1772, Lord Mansfield's legal judgment in the Somerset case ruled that in England, no master was ever allowed here to take a slave by force to be sold abroad because he had deserted from his service or for any other reason whatsoever. The case was championed by abolitionist Granville Sharp and meant that the slave James Somerset could stay in Britain, and it became a major talking point in Britain and abroad. 2 years later, Equiano's friend John Annis was kidnapped in London by his slave master to be sent back into slavery in St. Kitts. Equiano, using his London contacts, went to Granville Sharp.
I attempted to regain John his liberty, having known the want of liberty myself. I proceeded immediately to that philanthropist, Granville Sharp, who received me with the utmost kindness and gave me every instruction that was needful on the occasion. I left him in full hope that I should gain the unhappy man his liberty, with the warmest sense of gratitude towards Mr. Sharp for his kindness.
Annis had been shipped before they could free him. But the meeting led to a long-term collaboration and friendship between Sharp and Equiano. In 1783, Equiano sought Sharp's help again over the appalling behaviour of the crew of the slave ship Zong. When the ship was in trouble, the crew threw 130 captive slaves overboard and watched them drown. Then they claimed the insurance on them because they were deemed as cargo. Sharp, like much of the nation, was outraged. He led a successful campaign to overturn the decision to pay the compensation. And this was the second most significant step towards abolition, for it led to the creation of the Society for the Abolition of Slavery on the 22nd of May, 1787, with Sharp as its president. William Wilberforce became the Society for the Abolition of Slavery's parliamentary spokesman 8 months after it was founded, at the beginning of 1788. 3 years earlier, on the 2nd of December 1785, Wilberforce wrote to his long-term friend and mentor, John Newton. I wish to have some serious conversation with you. I have had 10,000 doubts whether or not I should discover myself to you, but every argument against it has its foundation in pride. I am sure you will hold yourself bound to let no one living know of my visit. Remember that I must be secret, and that the gallery of the house is now so universally attended that the face of a member of Parliament is pretty well known. Wilberforce had known Newton since he was a child, as their families spent time together in Olney. He'd long been appalled by the slave trade and was determined to take it up as an issue, either as a preacher or in Parliament. He met Newton on the 7th of December, and so began another historic partnership. In the interview I had with him, he advised me against making any more religious acquaintances and to continue in Parliament. On the 28th of October, 1787, after a day-long meeting with Newton, Wilberforce wrote in his journal, "God Almighty has set before me two great objects, the suppression of the slave trade and the reformation of manners." 2 days later, he requested information on the slave trade from the newly created Society for the Abolition of Slavery, which was guided by Sharp, which was guided by Equiano. At the suggestion of Wilberforce's friend, Prime Minister William Pitt the Younger, Wilberforce announced that he would be introducing a House of Commons motion to abolish the slave trade.
This is as true today as it was then. I'm sorry about the slave trade. I'm sorry for the violence. Sorry for the bloodshed. Sorry for the silence. Sorry for the prisons, the padlocks and the gates. Sorry for the gangs. Sorry for the hate. I don't know how we're gonna get out of the mess we're in. Only know there's only one way to begin. I'm so sorry. I'm sorry for enclosure. I'm sorry for the greed. Sorry for the people who were never freed. Sorry for the garden. Sorry for the fall. I'm sorry Cain killed Abel. I'm sorry for it all. I don't know how we're gonna get out of the mess we're in. Only know there's only one way to begin. I'm so sorry. While governments stay silent, kings and queens protect their money. We've got to start somewhere. I guess it starts with me. I'm so sorry. A white man's tears mean nothing. Only justice will set us free. Until our leaders stop hiding, it's up to you and me. I'm sorry for the slave trade. Sorry for the violence. I'm sorry for the bloodshed. I'm sorry for the silence. I don't know how we're gonna get out of the mess we're in. Only know there's only one way to begin. I'm so sorry.
two publications now captured popular imagination. They made even bigger celebrities of both Newton and Equiano and increased the clamour for abolition. Urged on by Sharp's abolitionists, Newton published his 40-page Thoughts on the African Slave Trade in 1788. This devastating pamphlet was sent to every member of Parliament and led to his being called in front of a government commission on the abolition to give evidence. The following year, financially supported by the same people who'd backed Newton, Equiano published The Interesting Narrative of the Life of Olaudah Equiano, or Gustavus Vassa, the African. His book ran to 9 editions in Britain, more overseas, translated into several other languages, and he toured the country as a celebrated speaker. He was, with 2 other former slaves, Cuguano and Ignatius Sancho, the founder of the Sons of Africa, who wrote books, pamphlets, letters, including one to Queen Charlotte, who some say was of African descent, to persuade the king to support abolition. Both Newton's and Equiano's publications give a horrific view of the Middle Passage, the Atlantic journey into slavery. From Newton. When 150 or 200 stout men are torn from their native land, many of whom never saw the sea, much less a ship, they are embarked. They have, probably, the same natural prejudice against a white man as we have against a black, and often bring with them an apprehension that they are bought to be eaten. It is not to be expected that they will, tamely, resign themselves to their situation and will attempt to gain their liberty. We dare not trust them, so we receive them on board from the first as enemies. They are put in irons, hand and foot of each on the same side are fettered together so that they cannot move hand or foot, but with great caution and with perfect consent. Thus, they must sit, walk, and lie for many months without any mitigation or relief, unless they are sick. I have seen them sentenced to whippings, continued until the poor creatures have not had the power to groan under their misery, and hardly a sign of life has remained.
I was soon put down under the decks, and there received such a salutation in my nostrils as I had never experienced in my life. 2 of the white men offered me eatables, and on my refusing to eat, one held me fast by the hands and tied my feet, while the other flogged me severely. When the whole ship's cargo were confined together, it became absolutely pestilential. The closeness of the place and the heat added to the number in the ship, which was so crowded that each had scarcely room to turn himself, almost suffocated us. This brought on a sickness among the slaves, of which many died. This wretched situation was again aggravated by the galling of the chains and the filth of the necessary tubs. The shrieks of the women and the groans of the dying rendered the whole a scene of horror almost inconceivable. Grace will lead me home. Grace will lead me home. Like a candle in the dark, it's grace that will lead me home. Grace will lead me home. Grace will lead me home. it's grace that will lead me home. When you feel like a ship that is rudderless, when you feel like a child who is motherless, when you feel overwhelmed by the otherness, it's grace that will lead you home. Grace will lead me home when they blame you when things go wrong, and they look at you like you're always the guilty one, and you know that you never hurt no one. It's grace that will lead you home. Grace will lead me home. Grace will lead me home. When the candle's in the dark, it's grace that will lead me home. Grace will lead me home. Grace will lead me home. Grace will lead me home. When the fire's just a spark, it's grace that will lead me home. When you read every single book, when you aced every one of those tests you took, and you're turned down and you're constantly overlooked, it's grace that will lead you home. Oh, amazing, amazing grace, it makes my heart sing. Oh, amazing power divine. Oh, amazing, amazing grace, this wonderful thing. It's yours and it is mine. Grace will lead me home. Grace will lead me home. Like a candle in the dark, it's grace that will lead me home.
Wilberforce's bill met much resistance because of the private interest and fortunes invested in the trade.
Paul and Silas were bound in jail. They had no money for their bail. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Paul and Silas thought they were lost. The dungeon shook and the chains fell off. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Hold on. Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on. Freedom's name is mighty sweet. Soon we're gonna meet. Keep your eyes on the prize.
Hold on.
Got my hand on that gospel plow. Won't say nothing for my journey now.
on the prize. Hold on.
Hold on. Keep your eyes on the
Prize. Hold on.
The only chain that we can stand is the chain of hand on hand. Keep your eyes on the prize.
Hold on.
Gonna board that big greyhound, take my love from town to town. Keep your eyes on the prize.
Prize. Hold on.
Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize.
Prize. Hold on.
The only thing that I did wrong was to stay in the wilderness too long. Keep your eyes on the prize.
Prize. Hold on.
The only thing that we could do right was the day we started to fight. Keep your eyes on the prize.
Prize. Hold on.
Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize.
Prize. Hold on.
Hold on. Keep your eyes on the prize. Hold on.
Newton encouraged Wilberforce at every turn. But on March the 15th, 1796, Wilberforce was devastated when what appeared to be a certain victory in the House of Commons was dashed by a whim. 6 of his supporters missed the debate and went to see a new opera instead. He accumulated 70 votes for abolition. Those against were 74. A disheartened Wilberforce told Newton he was considering giving up public life altogether. Newton was powerfully persuasive in a letter. Though you have not fully succeeded in your persevering endeavors to abolish the slave traders yet, the business is still in train. And since you took it in hand, the condition of the slaves already in our islands has been undoubtedly ameliorated. The example and even the presence of a consistent character may have a powerful, though unobserved, effect upon others. Equiano never lived to see his dream fulfilled. He died in 1797. His fellow sons of Africa, Cuguano and Ignatius Sancho, whose writings were also published as bestsellers, died before abolition too. On the 23rd of February, 1807, the House of Commons voted to end the practice of trading in human beings. The debate lasted 10 hours, and the House voted 283 to 16, a victory way beyond expectations. The bill received royal assent on the 25th of March, 1807. Newton died on the 21st of December in the same year. But it wasn't until 1833 that slavery itself was abolished, after another campaign spearheaded by William Wilberforce. The Abolition of Slavery Bill was passed on the 26th of July, 1833. Wilberforce said, "Thank God that I should have lived to witness the day in which England is willing to give 20 millions sterling for the abolition of slavery." He died 3 days later, aged 73. That £20 million was the amount borrowed by the British government to pay the British slave traders compensation for their loss of business by the banning of their trade. The only people who've been paid compensation. And in today's terms, £20 million is £2 trillion, which is half of the amount that our country earns every day, every year. By another irony, our government only repaid that loan to cover the compensation in 2015. The same year that Obama sang Amazing Grace at the Reverend Pinckney's funeral. Amazing Grace was first published with the New Britain tune we best know in 1829, 22 years after Newton's death. At that time in the USA, there was a huge religious revival, particularly among the black population, with large choirs using shape note singing to express their love of God. As evangelism spread rapidly across the country, Singing Billy Walker capitalized on the desire for more hymn books with a compilation, his 1835 Southern Harmony and Musical Companion. It included Amazing Grace, and from there, its popularity soared. It was adapted, expanded, adopted, and most often sung by people who had no idea about the history of the man who wrote it. Since then, it's continued to take on a life of its own, way beyond its original intention, and still full of contradiction and complexity. It was sung at the start of protest marches by Mahalia Jackson with Martin Luther King to protect the marchers against the police. Joan Baez sang it at Live Aid. Judy Collins performed it as a Vietnam protest. Johnny Cash adopted it for his prison reform campaign. Jesse Norman closed the Nelson Mandela concert with it. Aretha Franklin sang it as the title track to what is still the best-selling live gospel album of all time. Arlo Guthrie gave it to Woodstock. Phyllis Adams sang it this year at President Jimmy Carter's funeral. And even Tom sings it in Uncle Tom's Cabin. Yet the legacy of slavery and racial divisions still pervades our streets today.
Newton is still sailing in a ship full of slaves, while beneath the streets of London, Stephen Lawrence is in his grave. The devil plays the king. We want God to play the ace, while the choir still sings. Amazing grace, amazing grace, amazing grace. Work the slave to death and hang his body in a tree. Feeding the birds of the air, dripping poppies in the field. Mary's in the garden with her tears and widow's lace, singing hymns to the morning. Hear us sing. Amazing grace, amazing grace, amazing grace. When you are arrested for being in the wrong place, and you are convicted by virtue of your race. When hope turns to hopeless, light a candle in the dark. Let that still small voice ring out. Amazing grace, amazing grace, amazing grace. I'm no slave, but I'm too poor to be free. Who is gonna save a wretch like me when home ain't no more? 'Cause the fires took that place. Now even refugees sing. Amazing grace, amazing grace, amazing grace. I'm lost and I'm lonely where the homeless people roam, but I live in hope that grace will lead us home. I look at the world, tears roll down my face, but there's a song in my heart, and it's called Amazing Grace, Amazing Grace, Amazing Grace.
And we are going to sing Amazing Grace now, hopefully with you, in a spirit of inclusivity, of diversity, of forgiveness, of love, hope in the making. We're going to sing it all. If you know all the verses, sing all the verses. If you don't, we'll do the first verse at the end again too. Amazing Grace. Thank you.
1, 2, 3, 1, 2.
Amazing
us one.